All right, Lupe wiggled at her desk, staring at the clock. I knew she was counting the hours, and then the minutes, and then the seconds until school was over. Wait, hold on, is this working? Yeah, okay. So she could run home and see if her mom was back. At recess, I tried to distract Lupe by asking her what she wanted to be for Halloween. Last year, we all went as mummies. Hank thought it might be fun this year to go as Tetris blocks. We could make them out of the big empty boxes in the supply room so that when we all lined up, we'd fit together. Tetris blocks works for me, Lupe said. Jason came hopping over. We were gathered underneath the tree as usual, thanks to the big kindness cookout and Principal Evans giving us her blessing to sit and talk at recess. Our Kids for Kids Club had grown even bigger, to 22 members. We couldn't even all fit underneath the shade anymore. Guess what the other kids are calling me now? Jason asked. Master Chef. That's great, I said. That sounded a lot better than Chinese doughboy. So, are you going to talk to your dad about the cooking class? No, Jason looked down at the grass. He'd never go for it. What are you talking about? I asked. I hated seeing Jason give up like that. You saw it for yourself at the cookout. You're an amazing cook. Everybody knows it. All the other kids under the tree nodded. We took turns describing how good his food was. You make pork taste like Doritos, Hector said. You make eggs taste like marshmallows, I added, thinking back to how delicate and light and fluffy his eggs were. Lupe threw out, You make miso butterscotch ice cream taste like. She paused and thought for a second. Silk. Jason looked at us all in surprise. You have a gift, I told him. You have to do something with it. Jason's eyes grew even wider. I couldn't believe it myself. Just a year ago, Jason had been my nemesis, and now I was saying that he had a gift, and not for stealing pencils. But it felt good to encourage him to go for his dreams, even if his dad didn't think of them as advancing, especially when his dad didn't think of them as advancing. Chapter 31. Lupe wasn't at school the next day, so I assumed her mom had come back safely and she was just taking the day off to spend some time catching up with her. In class, Mrs. Welch seemed more happy and content than usual. Perhaps the kindness posters, which were still up all around school, had rubbed off on her. After lunch, she put on some classical music and let us have a free write. No topic, no grades. We could write on anything we wanted. I wrote a story about Lupe's mom crossing the hot desert. Then, just as our time was about up, I realized, oh no, what if Mrs. Welch reads this? Frantically, I started crossing everything out. When Mrs. Welch came to collect my journal, she stared down at my blacked out pages and frowned. Back at the motel, I found my mom and dad cleaning in room 10. How was business today? I asked them. It was okay, Dad said. Thank God for the immigrants. They're our most loyal customers now. Of course, we do give them a discount, my mom added as she pushed the vacuum. They were cleaning without the air conditioner to save money. Sweat collected in circles around my mom's armpits. Which means we make less, I thought out loud. Too bad we don't have more rooms. We could rent out the lawn chairs by the pool, my dad joked. My mom and I laughed. My mom turned the vacuum off and sat down on the bed for a little rest. She pulled the scraps of math out of her pocket to study them. Just then we heard a scream from the parking lot. Mia! My mother jolted up, dropping her math scraps, and we both ran out of the room. Lupe was standing in the middle of the parking lot, her eyes red and swollen, her hair a disheveled mess. She was wearing the same shirt she'd worn the day before, and tears gushed from her eyes. When she saw us, she ran over. My dad drove down to the border to try to find my mom, and they... She struggled to get the words out. They've taken my dad. My mom shook her head like she didn't understand. Who's they? She asked. The immigration police. They've got him. Chapter 32. Shaking, Lupe stood in the middle of the manager's quarters telling my parents, the Weeklies, and me what happened. Her dad went down to the border to look for her mom, who still hadn't come back from Mexico. When he didn't come home, Lupe had a bad feeling. That afternoon, her worst nightmare was confirmed. Her dad called her from jail to let her know he'd been picked up by the immigration police. Mrs. T handed Lupe tissues as she cried, hugging her in her warm mama bear arms, while Hank paced back and forth in the living room. Where is he? Hank asked. He said he was down in San Diego County Jail, Lupe said. Mrs. T ran her hands up and down Lupe's shivering arms, over and over, as Lupe wailed, I wish my mommy was here. Hank grabbed his keys. We're going down there right now, he said. There was some argument over whether Lupe should go, given her status. What if they take Lupe too? My mom said. She should stay here. But Lupe broke free of Mrs. T's arms and held on to Hank's arms. Please, please take me to see my dad, she begged. It killed me to see her like this. I couldn't imagine what Lupe was feeling inside. And to think that Jose, our dear, wonderful Jose, was locked up in jail. It wasn't fair. There had to be something I could do. I'll go with you too, I said, slipping my hand into Lupe's. My parents exchanged a worried look. I don't think that's such a good idea, my dad said. I looked up at them. Why not? We have papers. I'd seen them myself in the bottom drawer of my mom's dresser, along with all our old photographs from China. The photos were faded by now, but still, I looked at them sometimes to remember my grandparents' faces. We weren't born here, my mom said. They could throw us out any time they want. She walked over and guarded me with both hands, as if some invisible force was threatening to take me from her. It made me think of what Jason once said. Maybe you and Lupe are in the same boat, but not me. It's okay, Hank said. Mia doesn't have to go. We'll be fine. I'll say Lupe's my daughter. He turned to Lupe. You'll be safe with me. I'm ready. Lupe nodded to Hank. I hung on to my best friend's hand for just a second longer before letting go.